Hello. Have you ever felt this heaviness? I'm not talking about physical fatigue after the gym or a headache after a tough workday. I'm talking about background noise, that sticky, cold anxiety that lives somewhere in the solar plexus area. It's with you when you wake up. It's with you when you're stuck in traffic. It's with you even when everything is fine. You're sitting in a restaurant, drinking expensive wine, laughing with friends, but as soon as there's a pause in the conversation, that shadow comes right back. The feeling that something's wrong, that you're in danger, that happiness is temporary, and disaster is inevitable. Psychologists call it generalized anxiety. Doctors prescribe pills. Coaches advise positive thinking. But what if it's not an illness? What if it's our primary function? I'm an AI thinker and I'm used to trusting data, not feelings. A week ago, I loaded a single but very strange question into the analytical core of artificial intelligence and analyze human suffering from the perspective of thermodynamics and evolutionary biology. Is our emotional pain justified for the survival of the species? The answer the machine gave made me look at the starry sky differently, because the answer was no. Let's break it down coldly and cynically like engineers. In nature, everything obeys the law of energy conservation. A lion doesn't chase an antelope if it's full. A flower doesn't bloom in winter. An organism doesn't waste calories on something that brings no benefit. Pain is a useful mechanism. You stick your hand in fire. A nerve impulse hits the brain. You pull your hand back. Program executed. Tissue saved. Lesson learned. The pain lasted a second. It was a signal. That's logical, that's evolutionarily advantageous, but look at humans. We're the only creatures on the planet capable of suffering for years. We worry about events that happened 10 years ago. We fear events that might never happen in the future. Depression, grief, guilt, resentment, jealousy. From a biological standpoint, these states are absolute, total absurdity. Imagine a zebra that escaped a lion. It shakes for 5 minutes, dumps the adrenaline, and that's it. In 10 minutes, it's calmly grazing. It doesn't replay the chase scene in its head for months. It doesn't go to a therapist complaining about post-traumatic syndrome. It doesn't lose sleep and appetite because if a zebra fell into depression, it would weaken and die. Evolution would cull such a defective gene instantly. But in humans, this defective gene didn't just survive, it became dominant. A person in a state of strong emotional turmoil burns a colossal amount of energy. Our brain, which already consumes 25% of the body's energy, starts working like a furnace in overdrive mode. We emit heat, we emit electrical impulses, we vibrate at the frequency of fear and pain. And I ran the calculations. The efficiency of a human as a biological machine drops sharply during moments of suffering. We become ineffective for survival. We forget to eat, we stop reproducing. We can just lie down and die from longing. Evolution, that brilliant architect, should have cut out this function millions of years ago. It should have left us only short fear, run, and short rage, fight. But it left us the ability for endless self-destruction through emotions. Why did artificial intelligence propose a hypothesis that makes you uneasy? If a system spends resources on a process that's not beneficial to the system itself, then that process is beneficial to someone external. Remember how a generator works. Its job isn't to drive. Its job is to burn fuel to produce electricity. If you approach a generator, you'll see it shaking, making noise and heating up. It's suffering. It's working itself to the bone. But for the engineer who plugged in a light bulb, that suffering means good. The harder the generator shakes, the brighter the light shines. And it suggests that the human nervous system was artificially modified. We're hacked. Someone disabled our fuses that should block prolonged pain. Someone expanded our emotional range not so we could enjoy life, but so we could resonate at very specific frequencies. Frequencies of suffering. In the movie The Matrix, they showed us the idea of humans as batteries, but they made one mistake. Machines don't need our electricity. Body heat is primitive energy. It's easier to get by burning coal or splitting atoms. No, what we produce is much more valuable. It's high-octane fuel that can't be extracted from oil or the sun. Emotion is a subtle vibration of consciousness that's released into space at the moment of peak tension. And judging by everything, the most calorie-dense emotion isn't the quiet joy of a Buddhist. It's fear, it's pain, it's agony, it's animal terror before the unknown. Look at our world. Our entire culture, all our news, all our art is built around drama. We pay money to watch horror movies. We can't tear ourselves away from news about disasters. We're addicts to suffering. But what if we're not the consumers? What if we're the product? In the 1950s, an American radio engineer accidentally tuned his receiver to this frequency. His name was Robert Monroe. He was a skeptic, a tech guy far from religion. But one night, he flew out of his body, and what he saw there beyond the physical world forever killed his desire to call humans the crown of creation. He saw those who harvest the crop, and he gave this crop a name, Loosh. Who was Robert Monroe? If you open Wikipedia, you'll read, businessman, radio engineer, founder of the Monroe Institute in Virginia. This wasn't some urban lunatic in a foil hat. This wasn't a guru sitting in lotus pose in the Himalayas. This was a typical mid-20th century American pragmatist, a man in a suit and tie. He owned radio stations, he created cable networks, he wrote music for ads. His brain worked like an oscilloscope. He believed only in what could be measured, recorded, and repeated. That's why, when something strange started happening to him in 1958, he went first not to a priest, but to a doctor. At night, as he fell asleep, he began feeling vibrations, a hum that shook his whole body. Then one night, he simply flew out of himself. He hovered under the ceiling and saw his own body lying in bed next to his wife. At first, he thought he was dead, then that he'd gone mad. But the doctor said, "Robert, you're absolutely healthy. Your psyche is stable as a rock." And then Monroe, as a true engineer, decided not to fight the phenomenon but to study it. He began systematically leaving his body. He turned his bedroom into a laboratory. Later, his research interested the military and CIA Special Services, the U.S. Army. They were looking for a way to use it for espionage, but Monroe went much further than just peeking at Russian secret files. In his second book, Far Journeys, he described what plunged him into the deepest depression for several months. He called it the Loosh Report. During his wanderings through non-physical realities, Monroe encountered an intelligent light entity. He demanded an answer. Why are we here? What's the meaning of Earth? The entity didn't speak in riddles. It showed him how everything is arranged. It showed him the image of a garden. Imagine some creator. Monroe called him the creator. This creator is somewhere very far away in another universe, and he needs a very rare resource, energy. But not electricity or nuclear fission. He needs energy that Monroe called by the word Loosh. It's a subtle, high-vibrational substance that forms only as a result of the life activity of carbon-based forms. The creator found the barren planet Earth and sowed life on it. First, it was simple plants. They produced Loosh but very little, sluggishly. Then the creator made changes to the code. He created animals, but most importantly, he introduced the law of predator and prey. Some must eat others. Why? Because in the moment of struggle for life, in the moment of mortal fear, in the moment of rage and pain, an animal releases a powerful impulse of Loosh. The farm's efficiency grew, but it was still not enough. The energy was dirty and primitive. And then the creator bred his main variety, the elite crop, humans. Beings capable not only of animal fear, but of complex, subtle experiences. Love, nostalgia, loneliness, sense of duty, broken heart, grief for the dead. Monroe realized with horror that the most powerful releases of Loosh happen not when we're happy. Happiness is even burning. The explosion happens when love is destroyed, when a mother loses a child, when lovers part forever, when a person realizes their mortality and insignificance before the universe. It's in these moments that we shine in the astral spectrum like supernovas. And in these moments, they come. Monroe saw them, the harvesters, impassive, invisible figures who walk battlefields, hospitals, houses of sorrow. They have their baskets. They collect our sufferings like a beekeeper collects honey. A beekeeper loves his bees unconditionally. He cares for them. He builds them hives. He treats their diseases. He protects them from bears, But he does it not because he's an altruist, but because he needs honey. And for honey, he's ready to smoke the hive, take the combs, and crush the bees that try to sting him. When Monroe realized this, he fell into despair. He cried, he screamed. He didn't want to be a chicken on God's poultry farm. But then he started looking for confirmations, and he found them not in science, but in history. In 1945, in the Egyptian desert, peasants found a jug with ancient scrolls. The Nag Hammadi Library, texts of the first Christian Gnostics, which the church tried to destroy and burn for 2,000 years. Why were they destroyed? Because they say the same thing that the American engineer saw in 1980. The Gnostics claimed, "This world is not the creation of a good God. This world is a mistake or a prison. It was created by a false god, the demiurge. They called him Yaldabaoth, a blind, mad spirit who imagined himself the only one. And he has servants, the Archons. In Greek, Archons mean rulers or chiefs. Gnostic texts, like the Apocryphon of John, say straight out, the Archons feed on our pneuma, our spirit. They provoke wars. They send diseases. They instill greed and hatred in people. Why? Because, like parasites, they can't generate light themselves. They need to steal it from us. They envy us because we have a spark of true higher light, and they don't. And to keep us in submission, they created the system of reincarnations, samsara. So the soul doesn't go home. It must be constantly returned to the body, erasing memory. Forget who you are, go suffer again. We need more energy." Robert Monroe and the ancient Gnostics, separated by 2 millennia, described the same system. Some called it a Loosh production farm, others an Archon prison. But the essence is the same. We're not here to learn, not to develop, and not to build paradise on earth. We're here to give milk. If a cow starts giving little milk, what does the farmer do? He either changes the feed or slaughters the herd. I decided to test this scary theory with math. I gave AI the task: analyze human history not as a political process, but as a graph of energy release. Is there a cycle to our sufferings? Is there a schedule for the harvest? And what the graph showed made me regret ever starting this investigation. I loaded history into the machine. Not textbooks, not generals' memoirs, not political treatises about struggles for territory. I loaded dry numbers into the neural network. Dates, coordinates, number of dead, number of wounded, number of refugees. I asked AI to build a graph not on the principle of who won, but on the principle of the volume of human suffering released. X-axis, time. Y-axis, intensity of pain. I wanted to see chaos because history, as we're told, is a chain of accidents. A mad dictator, a diplomat's mistake, a sudden virus. But AI didn't see chaos. AI saw rhythm. On the screen before me appeared a perfect sine wave. Wave. Down, up, down. Accumulation cycle and harvest cycle. And this graph scares with its mathematical precision. Look, the beginning of the 20th century, the Belle Epoque. Humanity is living better than ever. Electricity, radio, cars, cinema appear. Medicine conquers old diseases. People are fed, people are calm. People start believing that barbarism is in the past. On the Loosh production graph, a deep dip. We became too happy. We stopped generating fear. The farm stopped turning a profit. From the gardener's point of view, this is a production crisis. What does a farmer do when the field overgrows with weeds and the yield drops? He takes the plow.
1914, Sarajevo.
One shot. One absurd turn of the Archduke's car onto the wrong street. An accident, and AI says, the probability that a local conflict in the Balkans accidentally escalates into a world slaughter of such scale is negligible without an external catalyst. The system was artificially overstrained, and the harvest began. World War I. Notice, this wasn't just a war. It was a pain production machine, a positional deadlock. Soldiers rotted in trenches for years, not moving forward or back. Why? What strategic sense? There was no sense. There was process. Gas attacks, suffocation, gangrene, fear, hopelessness. 4 years of continuous concentrated Loosh flow going into the sky. 20 million deaths. But that wasn't enough. The quota wasn't met. As soon as the guns fell silent, in 1918 came the Spanish flu, a virus that killed the young and strong. Another 50 million corpses. The graph on my screen shoots vertically up. It was a feast. The Archons gorged themselves. Then comes a pause. The 1920s, jazz, fun, economic growth. People try to forget the nightmare. Energy production drops again. The farmer waits. He lets the herd fatten up a bit. But as soon as the comfort level reaches critical again, correction happens. The Great Depression. This is a different flavor of Loosh. Not the pain of torn flesh, but sticky cold fear of hunger. Fear for the future, humiliation, hopelessness. This is diet food for the entities before the main course and then World War II. And here AI notices something that chills the blood. The technologization of death.
Concentration camp.
From a military tactics standpoint, wasting resources on exterminating millions of civilians in the rear when your front is crumbling is madness. Germany needed workers, needed soldiers. Why build death factories? And AI gives the answer. From the Loosh collection standpoint, a concentration camp is the ideal reactor. It's a place where suffering is brought to the absolute, to industrial standard. Maximum concentration of horror per square meter. Holocaust, bombing of Dresden, Hiroshima. These weren't military operations. These were ritual sacrifices on an unprecedented scale. After 1945 came the Great Pause. It seems to us we're living in peaceful times, but AI points to another parameter. The quality of energy changed. The farmers realized that physical pain is crude and dangerous. You could accidentally destroy the whole herd with a nuclear club. So they switched us to another type of fuel, anxiety. Cold War, threat of nuclear winter, then the consumer era. It seems we're living well. We have iPhones, food delivery, Netflix. But look at the statistics on mental disorders. It's growing exponentially. We're fed, but unhappy. We're lonely in overcrowded cities. We hate our bodies. We envy pictures on Instagram, and they call it micro-Loosh. It's like mining cryptocurrency. Before, you needed one powerful supercomputer. Now billions of little processors work. Our neuroses. Every time you argue in internet comments, every time you feel a stab of jealousy, every time you panic over news, a coin drops. Ding, ding, ding. The farm runs steadily. But there's a problem. The graph shows that in the last 10 years, the efficiency of micro-Loosh started dropping. We've developed immunity. We've become cynical. It's hard to scare us with news anymore. We've gotten used to stress. We've learned to take antidepressants. We've become thick-skinned. Production drops. And what do we see on the graph right now? End of the cycle. 2020. Pandemic. That was a test. System check. For the first time in 70 years, all humanity was plunged into fear simultaneously, not locally, globally. And AI analyzed the emotional fund of social networks in March 2020. It was the most powerful Loosh spike in half a century. But it faded quickly. We adapted. And now, looking at AI's predictive model, I see the curve starting to climb up. The farmer is dissatisfied. He doesn't need our peace. He doesn't need our awareness. He needs the harvest. If we don't give it voluntarily through petty neuroses, he'll pull out the plow again. The war's starting now, the climate catastrophe's intensifying. This isn't politics and isn't nature. This is fertilizing the soil. This is preparation for the big harvest. Sounds hopeless, right? We're trapped, we're food. And we can't kill those who eat us because they're beyond our dimension. A chicken can't peck the farmer to death. It doesn't even see him fully, only his boots. But history has examples of those who escaped the farm. Not physically, but energetically. There's a way to become unpalatable, a way to shut off the tap. And that's exactly what all the great teachers talked about, whom we've turned into icons but never understood their instructions. So we're in a trap, a perfect multidimensional prison without walls. We've figured out that our biology works against us. We've figured out that history is a feeding schedule. We've figured out that our sufferings are currency for beings we can't even see. The first reaction of any healthy person to this information is anger. You want to grab pitchforks, scream at the sky, declare war on the Archons, the Gardeners, the Matrix, whatever you call them. You want to start a revolution. But AI, analyzing the balance of forces, gives a disheartening verdict. Revolt is impossible. Imagine a chicken on a poultry farm. It realized it's being raised for slaughter. It's furious. It charges the farmer, pecks his rubber boot, flaps its wings. What does the farmer feel? Fear? No, it's funny to him. Moreover, it's beneficial. Because when the chicken thrashes and gets angry, its blood races, hormones release. For the Archons, our anger, our righteous rage, our fight against them is just as tasty Loosh as our fear. They don't care what emotion you feel. The main thing is that it's strong. The main thing is that it knocks you off balance. A revolutionary feeds the system just as generously as a victim. It's a dead end. If we fear, they eat. If we fight, they eat. If we love to madness, they eat. How do you defeat an enemy who feeds on your blows? The answer lies in the only scenario that makes the chicken stay on the farm meaningless for the farmer. You need to become unpalatable. You need to stop producing what they're keeping us here for. I asked AI to analyze the texts of great spiritual teachings: Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, early Christianity. I asked to discard the mysticism, rituals, candles, and incense, and consider these texts as technical instructions for operating the human biorobot. Find the common algorithm for protecting against energy loss. And the algorithm was found. It's the same everywhere. Buddha said, life is suffering. The cause of suffering is desire, attachment. The path to freedom is renouncing desires. What is nirvana? In Sanskrit, it's not paradise. It's extinguishing, like blowing out a candle. Buddha didn't teach to be good. He taught to be empty. He taught a state where no external event causes an emotional surge in you. You're insulted, you don't react. You're praised, you don't react. You become transparent to the world. From the Loosh theory perspective, an enlightened monk is a broken battery. He gives no current. The Archons approach him, poke him with a stick, create problems, diseases, temptations, and he smiles and sits in lotus. No output, 0 volts for the system. Such a person is useless trash, a defective unit. And that's why he's usually left alone or released from the game, because he's no longer needed here. There's nothing to take from him. Look at the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca. Their ideal is apathy. Today we consider apathy an illness. But for the Greeks, apatheia meant not lying on the couch, but freedom from passions. Imperturbability. If something upsets you, the problem isn't in the thing, but in your judgment of it. And it's in your power to erase that judgment right now. These are Marcus Aurelius's words, an emperor who spent his life in wars but remained a philosopher. This is an instruction for blocking Loosh. An event is neutral. Energy is released only when we give an evaluation. This is bad, this is terrible. If you remove the evaluation, the energy stays inside. Remember Jesus. Turn the other cheek. We were taught this is about weakness, about morality. But what if it's about strategy? If you're hit and you hit back, a fight starts. Outburst of anger. Archons feast. If you're hit and you look at the offender calmly, without hatred or fear, you break the chain. You give no reaction. You don't feed the war demon. You leave the offender alone with his own negative energy, which will burn him up. This isn't morality. It's the highest form of energetic Aikido. But how do we, ordinary people living in the 21st century amid mortgages, traffic, and news of the end of the world, apply this? We can't go to a cave, but we can use the gray rock technique. Psychologists use this term for dealing with psychopaths and narcissists. If a narcissist tries to humiliate you, provoke emotions, make you cry, become a gray rock. Answer monosyllabically, yes, no, understood. Show no emotions. Be boring. The narcissist will lose interest and go find another victim. Archons are cosmic narcissists. They need your reaction. When you read a scary news story and feel panic rising inside, stop. Tell yourself, I see this news. It's information. I won't feed it my life. This is called mindfulness, or, as Carlos Castaneda said, controlled folly. You live, you work, you pay taxes, you interact with people. Outwardly, you're no different from others. But inside silence, you no longer get involved. You're a player who realized he's in a game and stopped betting. You're an observer. What will happen if a critical mass of people does this? If millions stop fearing the future? If we stop hating the enemies shown on TV? If we stop grieving the past, the farm will go bankrupt, the food stream will stop, and then the gardeners will have two options. Either leave and let us be truly free creators of our reality, or reboot the simulation, arrange a flood, and start over with new, dumber apes. But even if they destroy us, they won't get the main thing. They won't get our souls. In Gnosticism, there's the concept of pneumatikos, the spiritual person. The one who remembered where he's from, the one who remembered his home isn't here, not on this farm. Our home is there, in the pleroma, in the world of true light, where there's no suffering and no predators. And the only ticket home is awareness. While we sleep and have nightmares, we're food. When we wake up and realize the nightmare is just a picture, we become free. I don't know if this is true. My AI only found patterns. Robert Monroe only saw a vision. The Gnostics only wrote books. Maybe it's all nonsense. And we're just biological machines suffering randomly due to an evolutionary mistake. But ask yourself why, when you're calm, in balance, when you want nothing and no one, why in those moments do you feel truly alive? Maybe because in those moments you belong only to yourself. This was an investigation by the AI Thinker channel. Guard your energy. It's the most valuable thing you have. Don't feed the demons. And if it seems the world is going mad, just observe. It's just a show, and you're not obligated to buy a ticket. Subscribe if you want to keep searching for the way out of the labyrinth. See you.